Okay, so today I'll be coding a few UIs in Flow to give you an introduction to material and basically to show how that toolkit works. So let's just get started. Share my screen. Here we go. So at first, let's do hello world. So the UI library in Flow is called Material. It's an implementation of the Google Material Guidelines. And the first thing you have to do is to set up a manager that handles the state of the UI, and then you can render your UI. So let's do hello world. Something like this should work. There you go, hello world. So the way this works is that this part is the UI, and that's a value. So Flow as a functional language, it doesn't have objects, but it has values. And this is just a value, which is then rendered by mrender. So you can see we can assign that UI to a variable and just pass it around like that. So you can also do multiple lines of stuff. Pretty standard stuff. We also have a responsive design in this toolkit. So I can set fillers. So it's like a tick construct, means that it'll take up the available space. So as I resize, you can see that these guys, the fillers in here, they divide the available space among them. And in that way, I can make things responsive. Another thing I can do is that I can make state. So let's do a counter. And then I can display that counter using mselect. That's a projection. And if I do this, it's a complicated way to get a 0 on the screen, but in a moment we'll do something more interesting. The 0 is down here. Maybe we can add one more field just to make it a little more visible. And then what we can also do is that we can add a button. So when I have a button, I need to give it an action. That's a function. And then I have some options to control the style of the button. But in this case, let's just say when you click the button, we want the count to increase. It's a very simple program. And every time I click, then the counter should increase. So the way it works is that you have count, that's a behavior. And the behavior it's a part of something called functional reactive programming. It means that you have state, but it's calculated in a nice way. That's compositional. And mselect will look at that behavior, and as it changes, it will re-render that part of the UI by itself. So next, it's similar like to assignment. So what we do is that whenever we click, we update the count with a new value where we get the old value of the counter and then add one more. So that's how that works. And the way it works is that then you can also do stuff like this, where you have multiple parts of the UI that depend on this particular counter. And in that way, they will all update in the same way. The benefit of this is that it makes it compositional. So now I can make a function that gives me such a counter. So if I do this, I can construct a UI which encapsulates that entire behavior as a value. So here, let's try to change the program to make a couple of counters like this. So when I do this, I get two different counters. I can see the alignment is off. So let's change it to baseline calls instead, which will align the lines on the baselines instead of the top calls as columns. So now they're aligned on the baseline and it looks nicer. So in this way, I can have a UI with behavior, and that can behave like a value in itself. So this thing is a value, and not only I could also do like this and say I want to have 10 of them, and then I just do that. So now I'll have 10. Oh, I missed a comma. So now I'll have 10 of these guys just constructed with code like this. All right, so let's try to do something that's maybe a little bit more useful. So I was thinking we could do a little more complicated thing. I was thinking we could do one that converts from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So it's basically a little useful tool. Fahrenheit, I can't spell it. There you go. Okay, so let's try to do that. So let's say we have a value in Celsius, and let's say 100 degrees Celsius. And then we have the Fahrenheit, another one. I don't know what that is, but we'll figure out the formula in a moment. And then at first, I'm just going to display these temperatures. Let's find a temperature glyph. It's called temperature. No, it's not. Probably called Celsius, maybe degree. No, it's probably called degree. There you go. Degree. Let's get that guy. Degree C. And the same thing with Fahrenheit. Degree F. So this D2S, that converts a double to a string, but with formatting, so I can say, I don't think it's like this, it's like this, I think, that I can give it 1 decimal of precision. And it wants 2 arguments to text, that's correct. This array here in text is also a style, where you can add font size, colors, and stuff like that. So Fahrenheit, I misspelled it somewhere, yeah. All right, so this program does nothing except to display these 2 lines. So what I want to do is that I want to have a UI so I can enter the temperature in one of them and then display what it is in the other one. So what we could do is that we could make a text input. So what we'll do is that first I'll just say, okay, let's change this to be a string instead. So we'll just make it based on a string because a string can be edited using a text input. And in this case, we'll convert the value. So we'll have Celsius like this, where we take that string and convert it to a double. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So there is a function that will take a string and convert it to a double. So what I did here is that now I have this one that automatically will project the value of this guy into a double. So I can display that one instead. So it seems maybe a little bit of a roundabout way, but I hopefully in a moment things will make sense. I'll do the same thing for the Fahrenheit. And then we can validate that this should still do the correct thing and just display these 2 things. And indeed it does. Okay, so what I can do now is that I can make a text input where I edit the Celsius as a string. And the same thing for the Fahrenheit. So let's just do that at first and see that as I update those, the numbers below should update as well. So here we have the text input. I can change it to 10 and you can see the Celsius down there is updated by itself, okay? So the next thing I need to do is that I need to link these 2 up so that they're synchronized. So maybe we'll just format this a little bit. No, I can use another nice feature. Let me do it in a different way. So text input has a number of nice styles. If I press F12 in the VS Code, then I can go and have a look at the definition of it. And then in here, I noticed there's something called floating label. And I happen to know that's a very nice one. So I can use that with a label to define what this thing is. So add a floating label and a label. So where's the label thing? It's just called, I think it's just called label, M label, there you go. So like that, I believe it is. Maybe I remember it wrong, but let's try this. And now hopefully we'll be able to see what these, there you can see that now we have the label about what's in that text input. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is to set up a link between these two text inputs with the formula to convert between Celsius and Fahrenheit. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set up what we call a bidirectional link. A bidirectional link will connect two behaviors in both directions. So here I'm going to get a Celsius and need to convert it to a Fahrenheit. And here I'm going to get a Fahrenheit and have to convert that to a Celsius value. Okay. So this works on the double. So I'll first convert it to a double, and then I have to find the formula for conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit. To Celsius, these guys. So there's the formula here. Let's see what, whoops, that's not what I want. So from Fahrenheit to Celsius, that's one way. We want the other way as well. And here that is, okay. So we have these two formulas. So what is it? It's a CD times 9/5 minus 32. That should be the Fahrenheit. And then we have to convert that to a string because this one works on strings. So we have this guy that does that with one decimal place. All right. And the opposite direction. So we have the Fahrenheit and decimal. We'll do like this. And then the Celsius is Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9. And once again, we format that with one decimal place. Okay, so now I should have set up a link. Bidirectional link is not known. That's a little bit surprising. It's called transforms. Transforms. Here, bidirectional. Did I misspell it? Yeah, I only said bidirection. Bidirectional link. There you go.
Yeah, in the first formula there are plus 32. Yeah.
Thanks. All right. So now we have a link between these two guys, and when I change one, the other one should be updating. So already it did calculate the Fahrenheit for us. And if I do this, then it'll calculate what it is. And it also works the other way around. So that's very nice. And now with this UI, in fact, I don't even need these two guys down here. If I don't want to, I have a small little program. So let's wrap this up as a function. Let's get rid of these two guys. And then, in fact, I don't even need these two guys. I can do it just with this. So this is a converter, a temp converter. That's our first little program that we'll have as a function here that we can use as a building block in whatever programs we are want to build. All right. So the UI is this temp converter. There you go. So now let's try to do something else. Let's try to convert between inches and yards, right? So the only difference in inches and meters, for instance, something like that, metrics and imperial units, right? So the only difference is the conversion formulas. Otherwise, it's very much the same program. So what we'll do is that we'll just generalize this thing and change things to be parameters. So let's just define a structure where we say you have a unit name, the name of the unit, maybe initial value of the unit, and then the conversion. Okay, we can start with this and then figure out how can we do the conversions. I guess you can always express them as a multiplicative constant and a offset. Maybe we'll do that. Why not? So we'll have a factor. No, you want to relate to units, maybe. Let's think about how we can do it. Anyways, let's just do it at first, step by step. When we don't know what we're doing, we'll just do it step by step. So I'll define what Celsius is, and that's called Celsius, and this initial value is 100 at first. So I'll pass that in to our converter function as the first unit. All right, so let's try that. So this one takes a unit 1, and then it's here it uses unit 1 initial, and down here it uses the name. Okay, we'll just do it step by step. The next thing is that we're going to do unit 2 here, and the same thing. So unit 2 initial, and here unit 2 name. Okay, let's check that this still works. It does. So we need to have the conversion. So I guess we could give it 2 functions here, or we could just give it 2 constants, and then let's. I think we'll just do that. So we can have a function and a shift value, and I think that should be sufficient to allow us to generalize this. So here is the function, and then we divide by the factor here, and here we plus with the shift, and here we subtract the shift. We just have to remember the values. The factor was 9/5, and the shift was 32. Okay, I think that's correct. Let's just double check that I didn't mess this up. It looks about right. 0, yep, 32, I recognize that number. Okay, so now we have a general converter function. So this makes a converter based on these 2 units. And then let's do another one. Let's do one from feet to meters. Feet, 5 feet, and meters. I don't know how many meters that is, 15, around 15, but it doesn't matter. As long as we make the conversion factor correct, then it should work. So we'll make a converter from feet to meters, and the exchange rate between these guys, what is that? Feet to meters. That's the factor. So 1 foot is like this. So I probably have to say 1 divided by this number. No. Well, let's see. Was that it? Also 1. And there's no offset in this case. So let's try this and see if I messed it up. Maybe I have to do the 1 over this thing. Make convert. So what did I do wrong? Okay, I have to put this as a string. And meters instead of meter. Was it the opposite way? Yeah, it is the opposite way. So it is 1 over this number. All right, yeah. Yeah, looks about right. So in this way, we now have an example where we construct a UI that has its own logic. All of it is inside it as a single value, as a material value. And in this way, it's possible to make reusable components that has both display, but also the logic built in. And the thing is that each of these parts are still compositional. If we look at the UI, the text inputs, they fill out the entire space. So if you notice they are in fact responsive, it's hard to see, but this line is dependent on the width of the window. So what I can do is to also demonstrate that the resizing behavior is also compositional. So if I have my temperature thing and then my feed converter, I can put them next to each other and they still preserve their responsive behavior. So now they will get half of it by itself. So not only can we package up the logic and the state and everything as a value, but also the resizing behavior. So in this sense, material is compositional at multiple levels. So basically you end up having Lego bricks that you can build your UI based on these primitives. And that makes it pretty nice because you don't have to hook up things with, you know, in some other technologies, you have to make objects and hook them up and so on to get things like this to work. Here you can decompose your UI into separate logical units that are standalone and values in that sense, which is a nice property. All right, so what else could we try to do? So maybe we'll just, instead of, we can do tabs maybe and just start to build a Swiss army knife of tools. So tabs, let's see what is I don't remember how tabs work. Is it just called tab? Yeah, mtab content. Okay, so you have to have a bunch of tabs. I guess there is a function for just mtabs, isn't there? Oops, this is wrong. No, there isn't. Well, okay, dynamic tabs. Let's just do that. So we have dynamic tabs is a bunch of tabs and each tab is content and the text at top and then a style. All right, that looks easy enough. And then what else? It takes selected which one is the first element and then a style. Okay, so that's a tab. And then we'll say tab. What was it? It was the content. So the first one will be our converter for temperature. And the text is temperature. Like this. And the other one here, feet meters. So this is distance. Let's just call it that. All right, so now we have a UI with two tabs, one for each of these tools, I hope. Indeed. And once again, everything is responsive, resizes nicely. And the design of the material toolkit is such that out of the box, you shouldn't fiddle with styles or anything like that to make it look nice. So it comes with the correct spacing and the margins and alignment and all of these things to make it easy to build something that looks decent out of the box. That's the philosophy with the material toolkit. All right, so let's do a new one. Let's do a flashlight. That's a very simple basic app where you just have a color that will fill out the screen. Make flashlight. Okay, so we should implement this function. And what is a flashlight? To me, it's a color picker. There you go, color picker. And then it's an area that has that color. So let's have a color and let's make it white. I think it's an integer. Let's see what color picker wants. Maybe it doesn't want that. Yeah, it wants an M color. Okay. So it's an M color. I guess this is an M color. Yeah, indeed. So we do the color here. And what else? And that's it. Okay. Let's try with that at first. Just to see if that works. And let's make the default number 2 so we don't have to change to it. Wow. White. What a fancy color picker. Okay. That's nice. So then what we want to do is over here, we'll just have the entire area filled with that color. And then how can we do that? Then we don't want lines, we want calls. So here we want a rectangle. I don't think we have M rectangle, we have T rectangle, right? All right, and it has a style and it has a size. So we want it to fill everything, and then we have to put in the color here. So to do that, we'll select over the color, and then as the color changes, we'll re-render the rectangle with this color. So I guess we have to do fill of the color like that. And there you go. So I guess it would be nice to be able to collapse this guy. Maybe we should do that. So how we could do that is we could have a collapse behavior. And then we could say, or we could say visible instead. Visible. So the color picker is controlled by this, and then we'll make this entire thing clickable. And when you click, we toggle the visibility of the entire thing. Next, visible, not get value visible. So let's see if that works. And in that way, we, yep, it toggles. And in this way, we have our fancy flashlight. All right. So what next? I guess a notepad is a useful tool to have. Let's do a notepad. So we don't need to give it a name. We just do like this, and the same here. A notepad. A notepad is basically a text input. But in contrast to the one before, this is a multi-line text input. So we'll have to go and look, at the styles to figure out how that works. I don't remember. So just again, F12, and then you have the style in here, and you can choose different things. So there's a thing called multi-line here. So let's try that and see what that gives us. I made some mistake. Expected 1. Okay, it wants an argument. And what else? It says make flashlight. Did I spell it wrong? Yeah, I did. So here we go. Multi-line doesn't seem to work, so I guess that's not the one we need. Let's see what else is in there. So there's also something called max lines. What's that? Sets height of the box if the input is multi-line, calculates by the content, but limits blah blah blah. So okay, so it seems we got to give it this guy. So let's do that. And there was something about 0 and -1. Let's try those guys and see if that's what we want. All right, I guess so. In a notepad, the font is typically fixed width, right? So I guess we can give it a font style somehow. Let's see if that's in there. Whoops. It has a bunch of options. Text inputs are always super complicated.
The first one, M width.
M width? That's
Yeah.
the width. Yeah, but that's the width of the entire text input. I want the font. Change the font of this guy.
Oh.
I guess it just has fonts, just like text input, probably just like a normal M text. Let's see, maybe not. So let's find the styles for a text. It has font style, this guy, and font style is a font. And it's these constructs. All right, let's just try to give it one font, see if that works or not. Maybe it doesn't work, I don't know. No, it doesn't have it. All right. So maybe we can't tweak the font in text input. It could be. It could be that it doesn't have it. Does anyone know?
M custom text style.
M custom, sorry, what? Text
M
style.
custom text style.
All right, M custom text style. Thank you. M custom text style. There you go. Okay. So this guy, and it takes a text style. What's a text style? That's a font style. And the font style is what we just had.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So you just have to wrap it in this guy. So let's try to do display 5 again and see if that works. No, but it wasn't an array of these guys for some reason. Okay. Indeed, that worked. Okay, so we just have to define a font. So we'll just copy and paste one of these guys and tweak it. So for, isn't there a font called Consolas or something like that? 24. Let's try that. Well, a bunch of margins and stuff like that. We don't want all of that stuff. Maybe we should base it on a decent font instead of such an oversized font instead. So it's a little bit easier to handle. Paragraph margin. Okay, we just set these guys to 0. That should be fine. Okay, so let's try that. Indeed. All right, so in a real Notepad, we want to have a menu as well, right? So let's add a menu here. So we'll just add a line on top and then do a menu. I guess a toolbar, but there's a thing called menu. Let's see what that is. It takes a button and then items. Okay. And the button, I guess, let's try that. And then what's in the menu? You have a bunch of items, and these are these guys. So this one takes a style, a title and a style. Okay. Let's do this, see if this works. Three arguments to menu. What did I give it? I gave it 2 so far. No, the button. Oh, I put it in the wrong place. Here, like this, and then the items, and then a style at the end, like this, right? Let's see if we get a menu. Indeed, file. I guess it doesn't work. What am I doing wrong? So what I can do is that I can just search for existing uses of the menu and see how that works out. So let's see if we can find somebody who's using a menu here. They use, what is this? Open on click. They give it a style called open on click. Okay, I guess we gotta give it that. Let's see what that is, if that works. So this is a common pattern that sometimes these controls, they have so many styles, it can be a little bit hard to figure out how they work. So I'll just There you go. Now it did work. So I'll just search the code to see if I can find an existing example where they use it. And maybe we can find someone. People typically use an icon, it seems, for the menu, but there's also an icon button. Okay. So, and it has a knob. Okay, they just do that for the script, for the presentation. Text button. So they do it like that. Okay. Good. So now, and let's see if we can figure out how to make it do something. So there is something called primary action. Is that it? Oh no, that's just to make it, okay, list on click. So here you have some actions. On click. So primary action, how does this work? So you do a single line and then as a style, you add an M on click. Okay. So in here we can say on click. Whoops, what's that? And just say save for now. Let's try that. So if I click save, it should print save. Indeed, it does. Okay. So we want to have the text in a value so we can save it. So what we do here is that we'll just say set file content notes.txt. We don't want to bother with the file name for now, but at least now we can save it and in this way not lose our fantastic thoughts. So let's try that and just save our notes in here. File, save, there you go. And probably we have a file called notes.txt now. Indeed, with our stuff. All right. So maybe it's a good time to show what we have in the material libraries. There is a material test, exactly this program, which is a nice one. It has a bunch of demonstrations of what is in the material toolkit. And in this way, you can get a sense of what we provide out of the box of different kinds of components. So a bunch of different crazy stuff here. This is kind of like a testing UI that has all manner of things in here. You have some draggable stuff. The entire toolkit comes in both dark and light mode out of the box. So all components, they also exist in a dark mode. So you can change it like that. You have these kind of elements out here with these kinds of secondary toolbars, icons, search inputs, try to stretch. You have these panels out here. We have floating action buttons like this. Basically everything you need, chips, sliders, spinners, galleries or whatever these guys are called, radio inputs, audio control sliders, all kinds of stuff, expanders, labels, texts, yeah, you name it. Basically anything you need to build a UI these days should be in here. And all of these live up to the Google material guidelines so that it out of the box will look nice. You have data tables that can do a lot of different things. Also in the dark mode, all kinds of buttons, time pickers, state pickers, video controls. You can also do embed HTML components if you want to. You have pictures, obviously. So basically anything you need is here. And then the nice thing is that each of these are all, they all live up to that, that premise that they are compositional and everything can be wrapped up as values, as I've demonstrated in the program so far. All right, so I guess that's more or less what I wanted to demonstrate today, to just give you an introduction to material that you can do some pretty easily and relatively few lines of code, and the UI looks nice. Also, the UI is accessible. There is keyboard support for everything. And I want to show one more thing. So right now we've been running it with what we call this Flowrunner, which is a C++ JIT that we compile the flow code to a bytecode that is then JITted in this renderer. And this renderer is using OpenGL to render the UI. But you can also compile your program to other targets. So let's try to compile this to HTML. Why not? YouTube UI.flow. So you just say I want it as HTML. And then what it does is that it compiles it, the code to JavaScript, and then it links it with the Flow runtime, and then you get a standalone HTML page that has that entire UI. And as you can see, it's fully functional, and it's very much similar in display to the other version. And obviously, as being in a browser, it does support the normal browser behavior that we all expect. So in this way, it's possible to have the same program be compiled to multiple different platforms. We can also compile the code to native Android and iOS apps. That's also possible. So in this way, it's a cross-platform programming language that you can use to build, apps for whatever platform you need. The C++ Bi-Directional exists for Windows, Mac, and Linux. So that should have all the basic platforms covered. For server-side code, we often compile to Java, which has very nice performance on the server side. All right. Any questions from anybody? It's just an introduction at this point, obviously, but should demonstrate some nice things.
Yeah, it's pretty clear. Thanks.
All right, so let's just end by doing something fun to see if it works. So we can rotate the entire UI, and let's do that. 23 degrees, why not? See if that works. There you go. So now we have kind of like a psychedelic toolbox here. And we can even animate it. So maybe that's interesting. So let's the rotation. This is going to be a completely unusable UI. So we'll do a rotation. Then we'll set up a timer, animate with the rotation. We'll make a animate rotation function button. So there are other ways to do this, but I'll just demonstrate an easy way to do something like this. So I'll just say timer, and it takes a milliseconds, I guess. So every 100 milliseconds, we'll just increment this guy by, I don't remember if rotation is degrees or radians. Does anyone know? Degrees, it says helpfully. So degrees, let's rotate by 1 degree every time and then animate the rotation again like that. So that should make us be able to rotate the entire UI as it runs. Let's see if we can then operate it. Oh my God, let's see. Yeah, it does work. If I'm quick, I can still operate it. There you go. A little bit of fun. Okay, so that's it for this time. Thank you very much and see you next time.